After 5 years together, just 2 weeks before our wedding, my fiancé told me he wasn't sure about marrying me anymore. Then, in front of his friends, he joked, "If you were prettier, I'd marry you tomorrow." I stood there, humiliated, while they laughed, but that wasn't the worst part. His mother called me later that night in tears, saying there was something I needed to know, something that would change everything, and that's when I realized I wasn't just walking away from a broken relationship, I was about to burn it all down. I should have known things were too good to be true. 5 years together, a love story straight out of a rom-com, the perfect guy. Handsome, charming, dependable, and now? 2 weeks before the wedding, I'm standing in a crowded bar, my cheeks burning as my fiancé laughs with his friends about how he'd be more excited to marry me if I were prettier. I wasn't always the type to let things slide, but Ryan Callahan had a way of making you feel like the sun rose and set on his time. He was the guy everyone wanted. Successful, funny, devastatingly attractive in that careless, golden boy kind of way. When he proposed last spring, it felt inevitable, like we were finally closing the circle on a perfect love story. But lately, cracks had started to form beneath the polished surface of our relationship. At first, they were small things: Ryan canceling dinner plans last minute, his vague, distracted responses when I asked about the wedding venue or the catering. He started spending more time with his best friend, Nick, a guy I'd always considered trouble. Nick was the kind of man who wore his disdain for marriage like a badge of honor. "Why lock yourself down when there are so many options?" he once joked during a double date. Ryan had laughed at the time, but I hadn't. But Ryan was Ryan. He'd always been loyal to me, faithful kind. I told myself that he was just nervous about the wedding. After all, everyone said men get cold feet before the big day. I was wrong. It started 3 months ago when I noticed how Ryan would look at his phone and smile, not a normal smile, a secret smile. I'd been sitting next to him on the couch, flipping through color palettes for the bridesmaids' dresses. I'd asked him which shade he liked better, sage green or blush pink. He glanced at me for a second, then back at his phone. "Whatever you want, babe." I'd leaned over to peek at his screen, but he tilted it away from me. "Just Nick," he said with that easy smile of his, but his shoulders were tense. Then there were the nights when Ryan would come home late from drinks with his friends, smelling faintly of whiskey and cigarettes. The first few times, I brushed it off. I mean, he was entitled to have a life outside of me, right? But then it started happening. Every weekend I'd find him passed out on the couch, his phone buzzing with notifications, and when I asked about it, his answers were vague. "Just the guys, nothing serious." The night of the bar incident was supposed to be a celebration. Ryan's groomsmen had thrown him a low-key party at the Rusty Nail, the sports bar downtown. I'd tagged along because Ryan had been distant lately, and I thought maybe spending time with his friends would help me feel closer to him. The atmosphere was easy enough: beers, football on the screens, Nick talking too loud about some girl he'd hooked up with last weekend. I was sitting beside Ryan, nursing a glass of white wine, when Nick leaned in toward him and said, "You sure you're ready for this, man? Marriage is forever." Ryan chuckled, his arm lazily draped around my shoulder. "Guess I'll find out soon enough." Nick smirked. "I mean, you're not having doubts, right?" I turned toward Ryan, suddenly on edge. His expression was too casual, too relaxed. "Nah, no doubts," Ryan said. Then he grinned and added, "I mean, if she were prettier, I'd marry her tomorrow." My blood went cold. There was a pause, just long enough for me to hope I'd misheard, but then Nick laughed and the other guys joined in. I sat there, stunned. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. Ryan laughed too, then kissed the top of my head as if it were nothing. I pushed his arm off my shoulder and stood up, shaking. "What did you just say?" Ryan's smile faltered. "Babe, I was joking." Nick was still laughing, but the other guys were starting to look uncomfortable. I felt every eye in the room on me. "That's not funny." My voice was low, sharp. "Oh, come on, Eliza, don't be so sensitive." I didn't let him finish. I turned and walked out of the bar, my hands trembling, my throat burned with the effort of holding back tears. Ryan didn't follow me. I drove around aimlessly for nearly an hour, heart racing. How could he say that? How could he humiliate me like that? When my phone rang, I almost didn't answer, but the caller ID said Margaret Callahan, Ryan's mother. "Hello." Her voice was trembling. "Eliza, honey, are you okay?" "Not really," I said, pulling the car into a dark parking lot. "Listen," Margaret's breath hitched. "There's something I need to tell you about Ryan." My heart stopped. "What is it?" Margaret took a shaky breath. "Can we meet tomorrow? Please." I didn't want to interfere, but I can't stay silent anymore. You deserve to know the truth before you marry him. "What truth?" I pressed. "Tomorrow," she said. "Please, Eliza, just trust me." I ended the call and sat there in the dark, Staring at my engagement ring, the diamond glinted in the soft glow of the dashboard lights. This was supposed to be the happiest time of my life. Instead, my wedding was unraveling, and I had the sinking feeling that it was only going to get worse. The morning after. I barely slept that night. Ryan stumbled in around 2 a.m., smelling like smoke and alcohol. He mumbled something about Nick and how the guys were just messing around. I didn't respond. When I woke up the next morning, the apartment smelled like coffee and bacon. Ryan's standard apology breakfast. He stood at the stove looking sheepish. "Hey," he said, setting down a plate of eggs and toast. I sat down at the table, arms crossed. "What was that last night?" Ryan sighed. "Babe, you're blowing it out of proportion. It was just a joke." "A joke about my appearance? In front of your friends?" Ryan dragged a hand through his hair. "It didn't mean anything." "You're sure about that?" He hesitated. That's when I knew. I pushed the plate away and stood up. "I'm meeting your mother today." Ryan's face paled. "About what?" "I guess I'll find out." His mouth opened like he was about to argue, but I was already walking toward the door. If Ryan thought I'd let this slide, he was about to learn how wrong he was. I barely tasted the coffee as I sat across from Margaret Callahan at the small corner table in Café Eloise, my fingers wrapped tightly around the ceramic mug, the warmth doing little to calm the AC knot forming in my stomach. Margaret looked different today. Normally polished and composed, she now looked strained. Her dark brown hair pulled into a messy bun, faint lines of worry etched into her face. She wasn't wearing makeup, and her eyes were swollen like she'd been crying all night. I didn't know if I was ready to hear what she had to say, but I needed to know. "Thank you for meeting me," Margaret said, her voice low and shaky. "Just tell me," I replied, my heart hammered painfully against my ribcage. "What do you know?" Margaret hesitated, gripping the edges of her napkin as though she was preparing herself. "Ryan called me last night," she started, drunk, emotional. "He told me things." "What things?" I pressed. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "He's been involved with someone else, Eliza." My stomach turned. The walls of the cafe seemed to close in on me. "What do you mean, involved?" I demanded. "He says nothing physical happened," Margaret said, but her tone suggested she didn't quite believe that. "But there's been an emotional connection for months." "Who?" My voice was sharp now. Margaret hesitated. "A woman named Sophie." "Sophie." The name hit me like a slap to the face. Sophie was Ryan's new coworker. He'd mentioned her casually once or twice, describing her as sharp and funny, but it was always in passing, nothing that had raised suspicion. I gripped the edge of the table. "How long?" "Since January." That was nearly 6 months ago. 6 months of smiling at him across the dinner table, 6 months of planning our wedding, 6 months of sleeping next to him while he was emotionally tied to another woman. "I'm so sorry, Eliza," Margaret's voice trembled. "I didn't want to tell you, but after what he said last night, you deserve to know the truth." I swallowed, the bitter taste rising in my throat. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Margaret's gaze softened. "Because I've been where you are." I looked up at her, confused. "Ryan's father," she said. "He cheated on me, he lied to me, he told me I was imagining things until I found out the truth the hard way." "I didn't know that," I whispered. "Ryan has always carried the weight of his father's mistakes," Margaret said. "He's terrified of turning into him, but," she sighed, "it looks like history might be repeating itself." "So what do I do?" Margaret's eyes were sad but knowing. "You already know what you need to do, sweetheart. The question is, are you ready to do it?" I barely remember driving back to the apartment. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to grip the steering wheel with both hands just to stay steady. Ryan was sitting on the couch when I walked in, scrolling through his phone. When he saw me, his face lit up like nothing was wrong. "Hey," he said, setting his phone down. "How was coffee with my mom?" I walked straight over to him, my hands were trembling. "Tell me about Sophie." Ryan's smile faded instantly, his body stiffened. "What?" "Don't insult me by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about." Ryan's mouth opened, then shut again. "You've been emotionally involved with her for months. My question is, why?" "It's not what you think," Ryan said quickly, standing up. "It's not. Nothing happened." "I saw the texts," I said. "I wish I were coming home to you." "Texts? Nothing happened? Are you serious?" Ryan's eyes darkened, his hands went to his hips. "Okay, maybe I got too close, but nothing physical happened. That has to count for something." "Does it?" My voice was sharp. You lied to me, you humiliated me in front of your friends, and now you expect me to believe that you didn't take it further? I was confused, Ryan said, his jaw tightening. We've been together since college. Eliza, I started wondering if I missed out on something, if maybe we settled too early. Settled? I repeated, my voice shaking. Ryan sighed and ran his hand through his hair. I didn't mean it like that, I've never been with anyone else. So this is about you feeling like you missed out on sleeping around? That's not what I'm saying. Ryan's eyes flashed with frustration. But you've always been so together, so certain about us. I guess part of me wondered if we were too comfortable. Too comfortable. My whole body was trembling with anger now. Do you want to know what I think? I said, stepping toward him. I think you liked how Sophie made you feel exciting, new, easy, because she didn't know the real you, the parts of you that doubt everything, the parts of you that tear down the people who love you. Ryan's jaw clenched. That's not fair. Isn't it? I shot back. Ryan rubbed his hands over his face. What do you want me to say, Eliza? That I messed up? That I'm sorry? That I'll do better? Yes, I said, but I don't think you actually mean it. Ryan's mouth opened, and then closed again. He looked at me helplessly, as though searching for the right words. Do you love her? I asked quietly. Ryan flinched. No. Then why did you want her? His silence was my answer. Get out. My voice was cold, sharp. Eliza. I said, get out. He stood there for a moment, his mouth twisting like he wanted to say something more, but then he grabbed his jacket and left without another word. I sat on the floor of the apartment for hours after he left, clutching my knees to my chest. My phone buzzed several times. Calls from Ryan, texts from Lena. I ignored them all. At some point, I pulled off my engagement ring. The diamond caught the light as it slid from my finger. My hand felt lighter without it. Finally, I picked up my phone and called Lena. Come over, I said. 15 minutes later, Lena showed up with a bottle of wine and a pint of ice cream. Do you want to talk about it? She asked gently, sitting down beside me. He cheated on me, I said flatly, emotionally if not physically. Lena squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, Eliza. I'm not even sure why I'm surprised, I said, swallowing hard. I should have seen it coming. No, Lena's eyes flashed with anger. Don't do that. Don't blame yourself for his choices. I stared down at my hands. It's over, isn't it? It doesn't have to be, Lena said slowly, but maybe it should be. I thought about the texts, the humiliation at the bar, the gut-wrenching doubt in Ryan's eyes when I asked if he loved me. I think you're right, I said softly. But even as I said it, I knew I wasn't going to let this end quietly. Ryan had taken 5 years of my life, and I wasn't walking away without making him regret every second of it. What are you thinking? Lena asked. I think Ryan's about to learn exactly what kind of woman he underestimated. Lena's eyes widened. I'm listening, she said, smiling. It had been 3 days since Ryan walked out of the apartment, and the silence was deafening. The first day was the hardest. I kept expecting him to come back, kept waiting to hear the sound of his key turning in the lock, his soft footsteps as he walked through the door, but he didn't come back. And honestly, I was glad. I'd spent the last 5 years building a life with Ryan, but now it felt like I'd been constructing a house on sand. His betrayal, emotional or not, wasn't just a mistake. It was a calculated decision to keep me in the dark while he indulged in whatever fantasy Sophie represented. And that bar comment, if you were prettier, I'd marry you tomorrow. It wasn't a slip of the tongue, it was a symptom of the deeper rot inside him. But I wasn't going to cry over it anymore. I was done feeling humiliated. I was done letting him get away with it. Now it was my turn. I didn't delete Ryan's number, but I didn't respond to his texts either. He sent a string of half-hearted apologies. I'm sorry about everything. Can we talk? I miss you. But there was no depth to them. No real effort to fix what he'd broken. He was doing the bare minimum, hoping I'd sweep it under the rug like I had every other time he disappointed me. Not this time. Lena came over that evening with takeout and a bottle of tequila. You ready to talk revenge? She asked, setting down the food. Revenge might be a strong word, I replied, even though I knew exactly what I wanted. Don't get moral on me now, Eliza, Lena smirked. That man humiliated you in front of his friends and emotionally cheated on you for months. He deserves whatever's coming. I don't just want to humiliate him, I said slowly. I want to make him regret it. I want him to feel what it's like to lose everything. Lena's eyes sparkled with dangerous excitement. I like where this is going. I took a deep breath. So here's the plan. The first thing I did was reframe the story. People had already started whispering about the breakup. Our mutual friends had been too polite to ask outright. But the curious glances and tentative, "How are you holding up?" questions were proof enough that word was spreading. Ryan hadn't said anything publicly yet, of course he hadn't. He was waiting to see if I'd quietly take him back. Instead of hiding, I called Karina, Ryan's sister, and invited her to brunch. Karina and I had always been close, even closer than Ryan and Karina were. She adored me, and I knew I could use that to my advantage. We met at a stylish downtown cafe and I made sure to dress the part. Sleek hair, flawless makeup, fitted white dress with subtle gold jewelry. "Eliza." Karina hugged me tightly. "I've been so worried about you." "I'm okay," I said, plastering on a serene smile. "Better than okay, actually." Karina's brow furrowed. "Ryan said you two were taking some space?" "Ryan and I are over," I said it matter-of-factly, watching the shock flicker across her face. "What happened?" Karina asked cautiously. I leaned back, letting my expression soften. "He's been emotionally involved with Sophie for months." Karina's mouth dropped open. "No way." "I saw the messages," I confirmed, "and you know what? I'm not even angry anymore." "You're not?" "No," I smiled faintly, because honestly, if Ryan thinks he can find someone better than me, I wish him luck. Karina's eyes narrowed. "Oh, I'm going to kill him." "Don't bother," I said. "He's going to bury himself." Karina tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "Just wait," I said, smiling. There was a charity gala the following week. I'd be attending, with a date, and not just any date. I called Ethan. Ethan was Lena's friend, a tech entrepreneur who had quietly admired me for years. He was tall, good-looking, and charming. He agreed immediately. The night of the gala, I wore a sleek black dress that hugged my figure in all the right places. My hair was styled in loose waves, and Ethan kept his arm comfortably around my waist. When we arrived, everyone's heads turned toward us. Ryan spotted us almost immediately. His eyes darkened when he saw Ethan's hand resting at the small of my back. "Eliza." Ryan's voice was strained. "Ryan," I said sweetly, "you remember Ethan, right?" "Of course." Ethan extended his hand. Ryan didn't take it. "We should get to our table," I said, smiling up at Ethan. Ryan's jaw tightened. "We need to talk." "No, Ryan," I said coolly, "we really don't." I took Ethan's hand and walked away, leaving Ryan standing alone in the middle of the gala, exposed, angry, and powerless. The night of the charity gala wasn't enough. Sure, it was satisfying watching Ryan squirm while I smiled sweetly at Ethan, but I knew it wouldn't last. Ryan wasn't the type to let things go easily. He was used to getting his way. He'd learned how to manipulate people from a young age, and now that he realized he was losing control of me, I knew he was going to try to reclaim it. The problem for Ryan was that I wasn't the same woman I'd been when we got engaged. That Eliza would have forgiven him, that Eliza would have let it slide. Not this time. Ryan had stripped me of my dignity in front of his friends. He had fed his emotional affair with Sophie while I was picking out wedding venues and floral arrangements. Now, he was going to feel what it was like to lose everything, because I wasn't going to let him crawl back into my life with half-baked apologies and teary declarations of love. No, I was going to burn it all down. The morning after the charity gala, Ryan texted me 5 times. "Can we talk? I messed up, Eliza, please. I need to see you. You're overreacting. Can you stop ignoring me?" Overreacting? He really had the nerve to call me dramatic after everything he'd done? I stared at my phone, disgusted. A few hours later, Lena showed up at my apartment with 2 lattes and a mischievous grin. "How's Loverboy handling his ego bruising?" she asked, handing me a coffee. "Predictably," I said. Lena rolled her eyes. "You'd think the humiliation would be enough to make him back off." "He's not going to back off," I said darkly. "He's going to try to regain control." "So, what's next?" Lena leaned in eagerly. "We hit him where it hurts," I smiled coldly. "His reputation." Ryan's career had always been the most important thing to him. He worked for a high-end real estate development firm, one of the biggest in the city. It was a cutthroat industry, and Ryan had always prided himself on his spotless professional reputation. So I was going to ruin it. I needed someone close to Ryan, someone petty enough to betray him when it suited them. Nick was Ryan's childhood friend, the one who'd planted doubts about marriage in Ryan's head to begin with. But Nick wasn't loyal to Ryan. Nick was loyal to whatever served Nick's interests. So I made sure Nick found out about the text. Lena casually mentioned the situation to one of Nick's girlfriends. A screenshot of the texts made its way to Nick's phone that evening. Within 24 hours, the texts were circulating through Ryan's office. Nick didn't even hesitate before forwarding them to a few colleagues. It was classic Nick, stirring chaos just for fun. The fallout was brutal. Ryan was called into a meeting with his boss the next morning. Sophie was questioned by HR. It didn't matter that nothing physical had happened. Emotional misconduct and inappropriate workplace behavior were enough to put Ryan's career in jeopardy. 2 days later, Ryan was suspended. By the end of the week, he was fired. I didn't feel guilty, not for a second. Ryan had humiliated me in public. Now it was his turn to feel small. Ryan showed up at my apartment 3 days after he lost his job. It was raining when I opened the door. Ryan stood there, looking hollowed out and pale. "You got me fired." His voice was low and accusing. "You got yourself fired," I said coldly. "I loved you," Ryan said, his eyes dark. "No," I replied, "you loved control." Ryan's mouth twisted. "Is this about Ethan?" "This is about me. We can fix this." "No, Ryan," I said softly, "you can't fix this. I made a mistake." "No," I said coldly, "you made a choice and now you get to live with it." Ryan's hand curled into a fist at his side, his jaw tightened. "Goodbye, Ryan." I closed the door. And this time, I knew it was over. By the following Monday, Ryan's reputation was in ruins. Nick had moved on to another social circle. Sophie transferred to another company. And me? I was finally free. I ran into Ryan one last time a month later at a mutual friend's wedding. He was standing alone at the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey. He looked smaller somehow, less polished, less confident. "Eliza." His eyes were full of something close to regret. "Ryan, you look good," he said. "I know." He sighed. "I'm sorry." He hesitated. "Do you think?" "No," I said immediately. Ryan's mouth twisted. "I miss you." "I don't." I turned and walked away, feeling lighter than I had in years. Across the room, Ethan caught my eye and smiled. I smiled back because I knew exactly what I deserved, and it was better than Ryan. Ryan was finished. The career he had spent years building was over. His reputation was in ruins. His emotional affair with Sophie had become office gossip, and after the leaked texts, no one wanted to work with him anymore. Sophie had left the company, likely to avoid further embarrassment, but the damage was done. Me? I was thriving. Ryan's downfall wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. He had humiliated me, betrayed me, and made me question my own worth. Now, I was reclaiming my life. And I was doing it in front of everyone. 3 weeks later. It had been 3 weeks since Ryan was fired, and I hadn't heard from him. Not that I expected to. He knew better than to reach out now. Especially after the fallout from the charity gala and the scandal at work. Ryan had become a walking scandal in the corporate world. No one wanted to associate with him. And as for his friends? Nick had distanced himself immediately. Even Sophie had stopped speaking to him. Good. Let him sit in the wreckage of his own choices. Meanwhile, I was in the best place I'd been in years. My job at the marketing agency was thriving. I had just landed a high-profile client, and my boss had hinted at a promotion. I'd cut back on social media, focused on self-care, and started saying yes to new things. And Ethan? Well, Ethan had been there through it all. Patient. Supportive. But he never pushed me for more than I was ready to give. "You don't owe me anything," he had said one night after dinner. "You deserve to heal on your own terms." That alone made me trust him more than I had ever trusted Ryan. But there was one final piece of unfinished business left with Ryan. And it was time to close that chapter for good. Ryan and I still shared the lease on our apartment. Legally, we were both responsible for it until the end of the lease term in 2 months. But I wasn't about to keep living in a place haunted by memories of him. I texted Ryan. "We need to talk about the apartment." He responded immediately. "Fine, I'll be there tomorrow at 7. Perfect. The next evening I was ready. Lena was sitting on my couch, drinking wine as I packed the last of my things. "Are you sure you want to face him?" Lena asked. "I need the closure." I zipped up the last suitcase. "Want me to stay?" "No," I said, "I've got this." Lena smiled. "You really are a badass." "I'm just done being a doormat," I said. At 7 p.m. sharp, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Ryan standing there. He looked like hell. Dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled, his suit was wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "Eliza," he said, his eyes softened, "you look good." "I know." I stepped aside. "Come in." Ryan walked in slowly, looking around the apartment like it was the first time he'd seen it. It feels empty. It is. Where are all your things? Packed. I folded my arms. I'm moving out. Ryan's eyes widened. You're leaving? It's time, I said. I found a place across town. It's smaller, but it's mine. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. We could talk about this. No, Ryan, we can't. Ryan's jaw tightened. So that's it? You're just going to walk away from everything we built. You destroyed what we built. It wasn't all bad, Ryan said. We had good times. We did, I agreed, but you killed that when you betrayed me. I didn't sleep with her. That's not the point, Ryan. My voice sharpened. You gave a part of yourself to someone else. You let her into a space that should have been sacred. You let her have emotional intimacy with you. And then you humiliated me for not being enough. Ryan looked away. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. I stepped closer. And now you want me to pretend that didn't happen? I'm saying we could try again. Ryan said. You still love me. I did love you, I said quietly. But the man I loved wouldn't have done this. I can change, Ryan insisted. I'm already changing. No, Ryan, I said softly. You're just sorry you got caught. Ryan's mouth opened, then shut again. For the first time he looked genuinely defeated. I don't know how to be without you, he said. That's not my problem anymore. Ryan's face tightened. Is this about Ethan? I smiled faintly. This is about me. Ryan's eyes darkened. You're making a mistake. No, I said. I made a mistake 5 years ago when I thought you were the one. I handed him the keys to the apartment. I'll have my things out by Friday. The lease is yours. What am I supposed to do now? Ryan's voice cracked. Figure it out. I walked toward the door. Ryan's hand shot out, brushing my arm. Eliza. Goodbye, Ryan. I walked out without looking back. The new apartment was smaller, but it was perfect. White walls, large windows, and just enough space for me and a few houseplants that Lena had insisted I needed. Ethan came over that weekend to help me move in. We were unpacking boxes when he glanced at me, smiling. You seem lighter, he said. I am. Ethan leaned against the counter. So, what now? Now. I smiled. Now I focus on me. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And maybe us? I walked toward him slowly, smiling. Maybe. Ethan's eyes darkened. He reached for my hand, brushing his thumb over my knuckles. I'm not going to be Ryan, Ethan said softly. I'm not going to make you feel small or unworthy. I know. And if you ever need to take things slow. I'm not scared anymore. Ethan smiled, then leaned down and kissed me. So, completely sure. I melted into it. A week later I got one last text from Ryan. I hope you're happy. I deleted it without replying. Because I was happy. Not because of Ethan. Not because Ryan was gone. But because I had reclaimed myself. Ryan had made me feel like I wasn't enough. Now I knew better. I wasn't just enough. I was more than enough. And that was the best revenge of all. The end.